Your business is in chaos. You don't know how much money you're making. You're not at all growing. You're staying stagnant in where you are. And you're not sure why. It's probably because you're not running your business like a true business. And you might be making one of these 4 mistakes I'm about to talk about. Mistake number 1, you're doing things out of order. Yes, I know a lot of the gurus and the coaches say, go test out your business idea to make sure it's valid before you go and create your website, get an LLC, any of those things. And I agree. If it's a new idea that you're just creating that there's no established history for, then yes, you want to make sure it's a valid idea before you go and spend all this money on all of those tasks that are not as important at the time. Because you might spend all of that money and then your business idea doesn't pan out. Now, if it's a business idea that's already valid and you know it works because you see other people doing that same business model, real estate, life insurance, hairdressers, salons, etc., then there's no need to do any market testing. You know it's valid, you know it's working. So yes, in some instances, it makes sense to do that first, to test the market to make sure your business idea is valid and it's gonna work. But that's not for everybody. Also, people will go and try to get funding for their business. You haven't even established a business and you're trying to get funding for a business that you haven't even proven is going to be worth that investor funding your business, right? And that's because people have told you to do that. They've told you, yes, you can go get funding because there's so many grants out there for new businesses. Go get funding. So you're listening and it's true, but you're doing it out of order because a lot of these funding opportunities, you have to have your business running as a business. Nobody's just going to invest in you if they don't see that you're a valid business. So we're doing things out of order. I see a lot of people making those mistakes. Mistake number 2 kind of is in line with that. It's not formalizing your business. You'll also hear coaches and mentors say, you don't need a website, you don't need a phone number, you don't need an LLC, just go sell, make money. Which is good to an extent. You want to go out there and start selling to make sure that you, number 1, have the skills and the capabilities to make that money before you go spend all this money on a website and LLC and all those things. So it does make sense. However, once you make that first sale or start making money, you want to formalize your business and start running it as a business. So you need to get an LLC or a S Corp or a C Corp. Now, everybody can afford an S Corp or a C Corp. So an LLC is better than just being a sole proprietor. You don't have to get any of these business structures, but if you want your business to look legit, like a true business, you want to have an LLC at minimum because it does offer you some protection, but not really, because an LLC is still on your personal tax return. You're still a part of the business with an LLC. So, but it does give you some extra protections. I'm not a lawyer, so if you need to get that information about the differences between the entity types, I suggest you do your own research on that aspect because it's different for everybody. Some people will need an S Corp right away and some won't, especially if they've made money or they've had their business for multiple years and they still don't have an entity structure. So that's important. It's not required, again, and it depends on the individual. You have to do what's best for you. But I do find a lot of people that have been in business for months, making a lot of money, or even years. I made that mistake. In one of my businesses, my first business, I made that mistake. I didn't know what I didn't know. And I had that business for 8 years. 8 years. And nobody told me. And I didn't do my own research. So it's my fault. I take responsibility. I didn't search and, understand the differences. So I had this business for 8 years and everything was just on my personal bank account, my personal tax return. And once I found out, and I didn't learn this in college. I have an accounting degree. They didn't teach me how to run a business in college. They taught me how to run accounting financials for other businesses, right? So yeah, I would highly suggest you get an LLC, especially if you're making money and you expect your business, or you're planning on growing your business, right? Mistake number 3 is not getting an EIN number. Again, not required, highly recommended. This also goes back to us doing things out of order, where yes, you can get an EIN without having an LLC. You don't need an LLC or an S Corp or a C Corp to get an EIN number. However, it makes sense, because if you really want your business to grow and you expect your business to grow, if you get your EIN number before you get your LLC or S Corp or C Corp, it might cause issues, because you might have to change your address based on your LLC's address. You might have to change your address with the IRS, and that is not fun. So it's better to have an LLC, S Corp, C Corp before you get your EIN number. Your EIN number is free. It doesn't cost you anything, but it will cost you in the back end if you have to make those changes later. So again, that goes back to doing things out of order. Yes, you can, and I know people that have gotten their EIN without an LLC, and yes, it can cause issues. So that might be another problem you're having in your business, and it's just part of the reason why you're not growing, because you don't have the proper structure in place to grow as a true business, and you don't look like a true business on paper. And that's how you will truly grow and expand your business, whether you're hiring people or whatever the case may be. Mistake number 4 is what I touched on a second ago, is not getting a business bank account. A business bank account, again, not required. However, if you want to look like a true business on paper and the perception of a true business, you want to have a business bank account. Another mistake I made with my 8-year business, my first business, I had no idea. All the people I had around me coaching me or mentoring me didn't tell me. Nobody even talked about it. Maybe they assumed that I knew, but I had no idea. And again, it was my fault for not knowing and not looking at the research, because this was my first business. It was my first time being an entrepreneur. I was an employee all up until for 14 years up until that point. So I had no clue what it meant to run a business. I took someone's word about all I needed to do to start a business, and that's what I did, not knowing I was missing all these other pieces. So take a lesson from my book and don't do that. Don't do all these things out of order, and don't limit yourself by not setting up your business structure properly. Because in order to get a business bank account, you need an EIN number or an LLC if you want it in your business's name. You can't have a business account if you don't have a business. If you don't have an LLC, you're a sole proprietor, right? So you want to make sure you do these things in order. Get your EIN after you get your LLC, then get your business bank account. And the business bank account is important because when you're reporting your taxes at the end of the year, you're going to have to make sure you know what income came in, what money came in, what you spent, what expenses went out. And it's going to be hard to do if you only have all of your money in a personal bank account. Same mistake I made. And I see so many other entrepreneurs and business owners that have had their businesses for years still having the same issue by not separating their business bank account from their personal. And not only that, it's going to look better if you go to apply for business credit, which was another thing I never knew about until 8 years into my first business. And in order to get business credit, you're going to have a legitimate business structure and a legitimate bank account, etc., etc. Again, funding, business credit, personal credit, I am not an expert on any of those. I just know what I know and what I've experienced and what I've seen. And so I'm just trying to help others avoid the mistakes I made. When I found out about business credit, I was like sick to my stomach, because I was like, what? I could have gotten major business credit if I had set up my bank account and my LLC for that first business I had for 8 years. Sick to my stomach. Another thing I didn't learn in college. And I'm like, wait, what? And I'm also thinking back, like, did they teach me this and I was just not paying attention? No, that's not what happened. But you don't know what you don't know. And that's why I'm a huge proponent of self-educate yourself. Educate yourself. Don't rely on other people to tell you what you need to do. Don't rely on other people to tell you what should happen and shouldn't happen, because they also only know what they know, right? So again, I take full responsibility, and I'm trying to help others. A lot of people ask me for help on some of these things, and so I see it happening over and over and over and over again. Everybody's making the same mistakes, right? So I want to say, though, it can be costly to maintain an LLC if you're not making money. So you just have to keep that in mind. But most states, you have to have, it's usually about $100, $150 per year to maintain your LLC, and filing fees. And like I said, an EIN is not required, an LLC is not required. Now, it's just recommended. Not having an EIN without an LLC, or not having an LLC without an EIN, is just, you're just setting yourself up for failure. So if you want to have a legitimate business and you want it to grow, you have to make sure that you have these minor things in place. If you know the business is valid and it's going to work, it's gonna save you a lot of headache in the future. And a lot of times too, back to the LLC point, you can really do this yourself. If you have the information, your business address, your business name, all of those things, you can create your own LLC. I see a lot of people paying attorneys to do this for them, because they'll say, oh, it's only $39 for us to set up your LLC. But that's because you have to pay the $100, $150 to the state as well, right? But then say you want to move your LLC or change your LLC, like, and you still have to go back to that attorney or whichever organization created your LLC, and then you're going to have to chase them down, track them down to make any changes to your LLC documents, or if you need to amend anything, meaning change anything. Like, so again, educate yourself on your state's requirements and how to apply for an LLC for your state. It's simple. I'm not an attorney, but I've made several LLCs for organizations I've worked for as well as myself. So I just want us all to be more self-reliant and independent and self-educating ourselves, so that we're not making unnecessary mistakes from the beginning, because in the end it's going to cost you a lot more money and a lot more time to make those mistakes corrected. So to recap, do not make these 4 mistakes. These 4 mistakes will cost you in the long run. Not doing things in order, not formalizing your business through a business entity structure such as an LLC, not getting an EIN number, and not getting a business bank account. Just the bare minimum, and it'll save you a lot of time, headache, and money in the long run. Till next time, I'll see you on the next video.